Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AKA Hotel Residences Corman Communities, Ariel Property Advisors, Amerant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Mortgage Lending, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Citizens Bank, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Casamatides Red Apple Group, Keysight Capital Partners, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Ocean First Bank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, Stonehenge NYC, SVN CPEX Real Estate Services, Tierra CRG, the Marengo Family Foundation, and these friends. Boy, oh boy, how is it looking for affordable housing in New York City in light of the pandemic? Will things change due to the change in government in the president election? Will things change due to a vaccine? I don't really know the answer. So today I've assembled this group of business leaders to provide their insight on affordable housing in New York City. My guests include Craig Livingston, who is the managing partner at the Exact Capital Group, Alexa Seawald, president of the Settlement Housing Fund, Andrew Warren, senior vice president, community development lending for commercial real estate at TD Bank, and last but not least, my favorite little affordable housing developer, Eli Weiss, principal of Joy Construction. So we have developers, we have nonprofits, and we have the man with the money. So let's look at the man with the money. Since you're the guy providing financing, is there money available for affordable housing today, Andrew?
Definitely. Right now is a difficult time. We certainly have folks that are suffering here in the city. We certainly have a budget crisis that we're trying to deal with here in the city. We're going to be dealing with that for a long time. But banks, the city, the state are all standing behind affordable housing projects. We're tied very much to a June and December closing cycle based on the city and the state's year end and calendar year end. So given what we had in March through June, there really was no June this year, but we're slated to have a pretty big schedule coming for the end of the year. TD Bank is certainly closing projects here in the city right now. We have an active slate of deals that are expected to close this December. We're committed to the city and we're committed to the people that we're trying to serve.
So here's the question, Craig, you're a little different than everyone else over here. You go into apartments where the landlords really weren't taking care of their properties, and then you tell them, give me an opportunity for me to renovate your apartment, and then you can move back. Isn't that a little interesting?
Yes, so we've done a lot of acquisition rehab work. And as a matter of fact, we've done a lot of it with Andrew's bank, TD Bank, over 850 units, as a matter of fact, over the past few years. And these are great opportunities to preserve existing affordable housing stock or rent stabilized buildings that make for great candidates to be brought into affordability. So we work with tenants closely to design a program that is minimally intrusive, where we can get in there in a very systematic fashion and renovate kitchens, bathrooms, some major systems like boilers and roofs. But we do it pretty quickly And, the tenants are always very happy to have homes that are improved in that way.
An area of conversation in affordable housing is NYCHA housing, especially with the NYCHA, the property that they were parking lots, excess land, and development. Alexa, I believe you're involved with some NYCHA work, and so is Eli. Would you explain the NYCHA deals?
NYCHA is doing a lot of interesting things, and I think it's a really important area for your viewers who are interested in affordable housing to be familiar with. There's kind of two buckets of things that NYCHA is working on. The deal that you're referencing, that we are at Settlement Housing Fund working with Eli and his team at Joy on, is a site up at 184th Street in Webster at Twin Parks West. And we are going to be putting up a new building there on what is currently a NYCHA parking lot. So NYCHA has a whole bunch of sites that they've identified to develop new affordable housing on. They have a sort of a range of incomes and different types of housing that they're looking to develop on these sites. We'll be putting up 182 units. It's going to be 100% affordable. And it's actually right in front of another project that NYCHA and the city helped finance, which is what's called a RAD site. We're also working on another NYCHA site, which is going to be doing a pretty substantial rehab work to existing NYCHA, and that's through a program called PACT. So that's the second bucket of projects that NYCHA is working on, and that's to try to bring capital and renovations to their existing stock. So that's a very exciting thing that the city is going to be working on and continuing to prioritize going forward. They're looking to do rehabs on 62,000 units, which is a very significant portion of the entire NYCHA portfolio, which is in its entirety 174,000 units. So it's more than a third that they intend to upgrade through that process.
So here's the question that everybody asks me. Okay, I know Eli provides a lot of nonprofit work for himself, gives back to the community. Craig gives back to the community. What's the benefit for an affordable housing developer like Eli and Craig to do work with you with settlement housing and in general? Eli, your turn.
Sure. So, first of all, I think when we were speaking before the show and we were speaking about titles, Andrew said, his group is called Community Development. And affordable housing, the affordable housing world is really a community. And the reality is, in order for our projects to sort of be best in class, it requires, a large ecosystem to come together, working with government agencies, working with the local community, working with lenders, working with equity investors. And the reality is, because it's such a broad spectrum of parties, teaming up with groups, especially nonprofits that are mission-based, that have roots to communities, that are able to provide social services. Those are aspects that my organization and Craig's organization don't have. So it's a natural accretive partnership in affordable housing between the private sector and the public sector, between for-profit developers and nonprofit developers. It really just goes in line with what the mission is, which is to create holistic communities. And to be candid, no one group can be everything to everyone. And so partnering with government agencies, with NYCHA, with non-for-profits allows developers like myself to actually end up building more thoughtful and more accretive projects for the community.
People talk about the term supportive housing. Who would like to explain what supportive housing is for the community?
Supportive housing is a subset of affordable housing, which serves a particularly needy population. It serves people who are in need of on-site constant services. So the city actually has dedicated programs to finance that type of housing. It serves people who have been homeless and who have some sort of co-occurring issue that requires these sorts of services. So that might be a mental illness or an addiction, for example. So it's a very important part of the affordable housing landscape in New York. It's the type of housing that really gets people who are living in the streets, street homeless, into permanent housing. But it is I would say, a sort of a smaller subset of the overall affordable housing stock in the city.
Craig, let's talk about your project that you've been working on for many years on 125th Street and what effect the pandemic has had on it, both with regard to the retail and with regard to the residential.
Sure. Everyone is living and working and trying their best to get through these unprecedented times with COVID-19. And we're no different at the Victoria Theater or our other projects in other areas of the city and state and country. But what we've seen there is, a lot of impact. So during construction, a lot of staff and construction workers did not want to come to work, although we were able to get that project to be deemed essential. It has an affordable housing component, and that's one of the qualifications for projects being deemed essential during that quarantine. But we understand, with all of the messaging in the media and the very scary prospects for people who are, line workers in construction to contract a disease that could, end the livelihood that supports their family. Some folks chose not to come to work. So our progress was slowed a little bit. We've since recovered and are on track to complete construction of the residential at the end of next month, and we'll have the hotel open in the beginning of 2021. But there's also been an impact, of course, to the hospitality world. A lot of hotels are just struggling right now. So we're talking, before the show started on camera, Eli and I, about, Marriott and, staying elsewhere. And, the rates are very low right now for most hotel operations because there's not a lot of strong demand. And, that's how pricing is done, based on demand. But eventually the world will resort to normal. And there's a distinction to be made with hotels between your hotels that rely on your business traveler. Because I think that's going to be a little softer for a little bit longer versus your hotels that rely on a leisure traveler, which is more in line with what we built the Harlem Renaissance for. So, being in Harlem, there's a lot of demand drivers for people who are visiting kids at School of Columbia, medical uses, just visiting Harlem because of the historical nature of the community. They're there to support the arts, etc. So we think that as soon as people can feel better about COVID-19 with the development of a vaccine, we'll see some demand pick up in our hotel. And then in the retail world, retail was soft before COVID-19. And you just have to be a lot more creative with respect to how you're letting a facility and how you're going to assemble the retailers. But we've had some pretty good interest, and we're signing leases. I don't want to announce them yet, but I think ultimately, because of the nature of that project and the fact that it's on 125th Street, it's high visibility, it will generate a tremendous amount of foot traffic. Retailers recognize this and are looking to be involved.
Andrew, as the banker over here, how do you determine, or how do you make a decision on which projects you want to finance?
It's complicated. Certainly what Eli said is right. You look first for who the sponsorship is and what the partnership is that's going to develop that building. You want to make sure that you've got a development team that has the capacity and capability to build it, but you want to make sure that the team itself is doing the right thing for the building, the right thing for the community. And he mentioned the title, community development. Affordable housing is one piece of community development, but that community development can mean social services, retail, commercial. It can mean a lot of other things that go into the building. From our strategy at the bank, we look at projects that have an impact. We look at projects that are going to make a bigger difference in a neighborhood, whether it's preservation of almost 1,000 units that Craig did, whether it's the services and the supportive housing that Alexa did. We can make a deal work. There's plenty of money behind it. We can lend as much and invest as much as possible. But when it comes down to it, we want to make sure that when we stand in front of the OCC, and we're regulated, part of why we invest here is for Community Reinvestment Act credit. The question they're going to ask, outside of looking at what you did, the dollars you put out, and the number, is which projects mattered, what's the context, and how much impact could you put into a community to make it more than just a commitment, but something bigger to keep dollars and keep community intact.
So here's the question with regard that everybody always asks me when I'm on the radio or on television. How does somebody qualify and get into a lottery? Who wants to talk about that? And the different ranges, because, you know, you were talking before, Alexa and Eli, with regard to the pricing, you know, of the 80% of AMI, the 50% of AMI. How's the determination made of who's going to be qualified, or up to 130% of AMI?
Sure, I'm happy to take that. So the way people should access affordable housing is through an online system called Housing Connect, and I'll give you that website. It's housingconnect.nyc.gov. And it's a nifty website that I think is pretty user-friendly to people who want to apply for affordable housing. The way it works is you log on there, you register yourself, you can see all of the current affordable housing listings that are currently leasing up. But once you're in the system, you can keep coming back and you can keep applying to those developments that are attractive to you. You know, that might be based on the location, but certainly has a lot to do with for which of those projects you may be eligible. And Michael, you're right. By eligible in the affordable housing world, what we're talking about is what your income levels are. And there's a range of income levels that these projects are developed for. Anywhere from people who are homeless and who may have little to no income, all the way up to people making, say, for a family of four, around $130,000 or so. The project that Eli and I are working on together is what I described as mixed income, 100% affordable. We will have housing available for homeless families in that building. We're also developing housing for a family of four, I would say anywhere from $35,000 a year to $90,000 a year. And those numbers are not really just kind of made up by developers. It really depends on the sources of funding and subsidy and tax credits that are in the deal, because depending upon those funding sources, we are sort of limited in the types of incomes that we can develop the housing for.
Eli, you're always looking for property. You've done a lot in the Bronx. What's the status today of, you know, the rezonings with regard to the city for affordability? You know, Inwood.
Yeah, I've been involved in, you know, I think 14 or 15 rezonings in my career, and then some when I was in public service in the public sector. And I would tell you that the sentiment has changed, you know, dramatically, in the sense that in the old days, rezonings were things that many people in the neighborhood welcomed and were done in collaboration with the community. Unfortunately, the last 4 to 5 years, there's been a lot more controversy regarding rezonings. The laws have not changed. We're still using the same ULURP process, and we're still using the same environmental review process. It's just sentiment has changed dramatically. And so the Inwood rezoning ended up and is still in the final stages of litigation. And it's unfortunate because the programs that we all participate in require money from the city or the state or the federal government. And there's a limit to how much any of those entities can put in. So rezonings typically create density and FAR, floor area ratio bonus, to allow you to build more. And essentially what the city is doing is saying, instead of me writing a check, we're going to give you air, and that will be another form of subsidy. And unfortunately, you know, I think the last 5 years, there's been an anti-development sentiment in the city, and that's trickled down into the rezoning process. We saw the East Harlem rezoning be very contentious. Far Rockaway, Industry City is going through it right now. Two Bridges, unfortunately, rather than being able to work collaboratively, these processes are ending up in litigation. That said, these rezonings typically do yield a significant amount of affordable housing. And so it's sort of a push and pull. And, right now, being that it's a public review process and public sentiment is not exactly developer friendly, it makes developing affordable housing even more challenging. And that's not to say we don't have enough challenges as it is. This is just one more.
For that reason, Craig, you've been developing in Connecticut. Is it easier to develop in other states?
The short answer is absolutely. And the reason is, in New York City, we have a very active set of constituents, and not everyone has the same exact perspective. So we're in a city where housing is very expensive. People want lower rents. They push back on how expensive a lot of new construction real estate is. However, they're also at the same time, which is a little bit contradictory, in opposition to development and in opposition to rezonings, which is the very thing we need to do, increase the supply to help bring down the cost of rentals. So it's a very New York-esque problem. In other states, other municipalities, and we're not just in Connecticut, we're in Georgia, in Oklahoma, in Indianapolis. And I will tell you, almost unanimously, when you show up to build affordable housing in these other cities, these other municipalities, you're really welcome. It's like New York 15 years ago, right? People understand the condition that they're in, and there aren't a lot of affordable housing real estate developers in every city. When we do show up, we're usually welcomed, assisted, and members of the community, we work in tandem with them collaboratively to produce the desired outcome.
Andrew, a question for you. Everybody talks about tax credits for affordable housing. Could you explain what tax credits for affordable housing means?
Sure. There's a number of different tax credit programs. The most common program is the Federal Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, which has been around since 1986, has been the single most effective housing program in the country's history. Developers, either through a competitive award to a project or by qualifying by having tax-exempt bonds finance the project, can generate tax credits based on the cost of the building, as long as they agree to lease and operate the building for low or moderate income people. Those tax credits can be bought. They can be syndicated to a bank, an investor, a financial institution, who then provides the equity capital to a project to build it in construction. They then receive their credits over a period to ensure compliance with the affordability covenants on the project. And ultimately, the bank or the investor is in the project as a partner long-term. There's a number of other credit programs. You can get credits for developing historic buildings. The state provides credits for certain units, depending upon a little bit higher, more middle income resident. And then for developing on brownfield sites, there's also brownfield credits to help remediate some of the older, more environmentally damaged sites that are purchased by the same types of investors.
With like 2 minutes left, I'd just like to pose the question to all three developers over here, because we have the banker. Are landowners being more cognizant that it's difficult to develop and reducing their price for land, or are they still being adamant in saying that the land is worth more for market rate rentals?
Yeah, I've not seen landowners yet capitulate for a variety of reasons. Number one, they're just, for the first 90 to 100 days of COVID, there were almost no transactions in general. And then, as Craig and everybody sort of is hoping that, perhaps there's going to be a vaccine right around the corner, perhaps there's going to be federal stimulus. And so I don't think people, unless somebody is extremely over-levered, which is usually not the case in land in the boroughs, at least in this cycle. So I've not seen anybody capitulate. The reality is that the city government has less funds, the state government has less funds. And so, in theory, the land prices should be coming down, but that's in theory. In practice, landowners are saying, why would I sell right now unless I have to? There are really not a lot of comps justifying anybody's position. and everybody's hopeful in any business, what you're in, that good news is just around the corner, whether it be politically, whether it be through a vaccine, whether it be economically. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of deeply discounted trades on any level, in any real estate asset class in the private sector, at least for another 6 to 9 months.
Craig and Alexa?
Yeah, I agree with Eli. We haven't seen, any declines whatsoever in asking prices for land, and really, not really in any, multifamily asset class to date, not through COVID. And I think, the point Eli makes is a good one. Folks are kind of waiting and seeing. Unless you have a dire need to sell, people aren't going to sell right now.
Okay. So I think in summation, I mean, as I would say with my crystal apple, it's a little blurry. It's not shiny and it's not dull, but it's a little blurry. I think we have to resolve the COVID. We need the vaccine. It's great that the developers are continuing to build. It's great that Andrew and the team at TD is doing their work around the country and providing financing. But you know what? We have some difficult times ahead. I'd like to thank Alexa, Andrew, Eli, and Craig, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.